It began as a typical Sunday morning. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and steam curled up from my coffee mug as my wife, blissfully unaware, tended to the flowers in our new front garden. We had recently relocated to what was marketed as an exclusive neighborhood with a homeowners association, HOA, that prided itself on stringent security measures. We assumed this was merely a promotional tactic. Never did we anticipate the jarring sound of fake police sirens down our private drive or a pseudo-policeman brandishing a firearm at my wife. His gravest error wasn't the trespass itself, it was underestimating the woman he confronted, mistaking her for a mere civilian. Little did he know, my wife was a composed and skillful Delta Force operative, and what ensued marked the beginning of an unprecedented suburban showdown with this HOA. I was seated on the porch swing, leisurely sipping my coffee and browsing through my phone, when the screech of tires interrupted the tranquility. A white SUV, poorly marked with HOA Enforcement Division, hurtled up our driveway. The makeshift flashing lights taped to its roof only added to the absurdity, blaring a distorted siren that resembled no known emergency call. At first I chuckled, assuming it to be a prank or the antics of local youth. However, my amusement faded when the driver emerged, clad in a uniform that was anything but official, black cargo trousers, a tan shirt displaying a generic security patch and a badge that seemed destiny for a costume box. Yet, the gun at his side appeared alarmingly authentic. He approached our lawn with an aggressive swagger, barking orders about a supposed violation. "This fence is non-compliant, you're trespassing under Section B32, he declared. Stunned, I blinked in confusion. We had just installed the fence with proper permits and professional standards. Before I could rise to confront him, my wife turned around. She'd been focused on watering her plants, casual in yoga pants with her hair in a messy bun. There was nothing threatening about her demeanor. She faced him and simply said, "Excuse me." That's when he drew his pistol, aiming it straight at her. "Hands in the air, HOA enforcement. You're under citizen's arrest for hostile trespassing," he bellowed. My coffee mug slipped from my grasp as adrenaline surged through me. "Are you out of your mind? That's my wife on our property," I protested. But he ignored me, fixated entirely on her, his second grave error. In swift, fluid motions my wife dispatched him effortlessly. She twisted his wrist, sending the gun flying into the hydrangeas, swept his legs, and pinned him to the grass with her knee pressed firmly into his back. Calmly she retrieved a pair of zip ties from her pocket, his own ironically, and secured him. Leaning close she warned, "Brandish a weapon at me again, and you'll know what a real takedown entails." The man lay in silence, unable to process what had just happened. I approached, still trying to comprehend the scene. "What on earth just occurred?" I asked. Instead of replying, she methodically scanned our surroundings, then instructed me, "Call the police, the real ones." Within 10 minutes, genuine police cars arrived, lights flashing. I anticipated gratitude for thwarting a fraudulent armed threat. Instead, the officers exited, hands prepared on their weapons as though we were the suspects. "We received a report of an altercation involving a weapon," one said, gesturing towards the subdued man on our lawn. "Is that him?" "Yes," I affirmed. He aimed a gun at my wife. Before accusations could fly, she smoothly produced a legitimate badge. The officer stood back, eyes widening. "Delta Force active," she stated, maintaining an authoritative, commanding tone. I disarmed a threat on my property. Recognition dawned on the second officer, mouth agape. "You're still active?" She nodded, weariness tinging her response. "Just returned from an operation last month, hoping for a peaceful weekend." Looking down at the defeated figure beneath her, she simply added, "Apparently not." The imposter whimpered his defense. "I didn't know, thought she was just a housewife." My wife retorted coolly, "Wrong house." The officers, now aware of the situation, dutifully cuffed the bogus cop and confiscated his weapon, restoring order to our disrupted morning. After running some checks, it emerged that the man wasn't a police officer at all, but an overly eager volunteer from the local HOA, masquerading as law enforcement with real ammunition. As they bundled him into the car, I turned to my wife. "You never even told me half of this." She smirked. "There are things I can't share, but trust me, this is nothing compared to what I've seen." Despite the unexpected turn of events, I felt a sense of pride. I'd married a warrior. Our neighbors were about to learn precisely what that meant. Little did we know this wasn't merely about a rogue HOA volunteer. It was just the start. A covert HOA enforcement squad had been intimidating the neighborhood for months, armed with fake IDs, guns, and false authority, inching towards a reckoning. My wife had already started devising a plan to dismantle them. The next morning our doorbell chimed before dawn. My wife was already up, enjoying tea in the kitchen as she monitored the surveillance cameras she'd secretly installed upon moving in. "That's not a neighbor," she stated flatly, setting her mug aside. On screen, a man in a creased suit stood at the gate, flanked by two others wearing identical polos emblazoned with HOA admin team. They didn't appear friendly. I opened the door just enough to be courteous and was greeted with a self-satisfied voice before I could utter a word. "You need to provide all footage and documentation related to yesterday's incident. This is now HOA business," declared the man in the suit. "As the Homeowners Association president, I'm instructing you to comply." My wife stepped beside me, arms crossed. "Do you have a warrant?" she inquired. He hesitated. "A court warrant? Signed and legal," she clarified. "If you want any of our property files or even another moment of our time, you bring one. Until then you're trespassing." One of the polo-wearing men fumbled with his clipboard. "We thought this might be resolved internally, neighbor to neighbor." She didn't budge. "Your enforcer threatened a federal operative with a loaded weapon. This isn't neighborly, it's federal versus felon," before shutting the door in their faces as if it were routine in covert operations worldwide. We stood silently until I remarked, "They're covering something up." She corrected me, "No, they're protecting something, there's a difference." That morning marked the start of our investigation. My wife wasn't just trained in combat, she was adept at uncovering secrets, dismantling systems and exposing threats from within. This HOA was a threat hidden in polos and community event flyers. We explored the neighborhood's online portal, full of cheery newsletters and garden contest photos. Then she unearthed the administrator backend, password protected. With a secure drawer and an old military-grade tablet, she cracked the encryption in 3 minutes. What we discovered was astounding. There was a concealed tab labeled ED, indicating an enforcement division with lists of names, schedules, citations issued, and even equipment checklists. These weren't amateur inspectors. They were conducting patrols, issuing fake fines, enforcing bogus restrictions, and in some instances performing citizen arrests. One individual had notes stating experienced in takedowns and effective in confrontations. Another was noted as trusted for solo operations. Solo operations? This was a militia, not HOA volunteers. My wife murmured, "These are uniformed mercenaries." More disturbingly, Tyler B., the man who brandished a weapon at her, had 3 prior complaints from other residents. One accused him of threatening to tow a car with a child inside, and another claimed he scaled a fence at midnight due to excessive porch lighting that disrupted the community aesthetic. We needed to ascertain if this was an isolated faction or part of a larger scheme, so we visited 3 nearby homes noted in the HOA complaint logs. Each had a story to tell. The first was from an elderly widow, unfairly fined $500 for untidy shrubs, unable to read the violation notice. The second, a young couple reported an HOA enforcer barging into their backyard during a barbecue, attempting to halt it for noise disturbance at 6:45 p.m. The third, a single father, discovered a tracking device affixed beneath his truck but didn't report it, fearing reprisal. With each account, the picture became increasingly clear. It wasn't a mere issue with a couple of volunteers. Rather, it was an entire system entrenched in intimidation and fear. The HOA president dominated at the top, overseeing what resembled a private security organization instead of a community board. The officers had no formal training or licenses. Some weren't even locals. That night, my wife sat down and started compiling what she named an initial brief. Photos, victim statements, surveillance footage, and time-stamped reports, all meticulously arranged like a military dossier. Then she made a call, keeping identities confidential and saying only, "I need verification on a Tier 3 asset acting in a civilian suburb, potentially armed and possibly coordinated." The voice on the other end responded with a simple approval, "Permission granted, proceed with caution." While reviewing the list of HOA members again, I noticed a recurring name, Patricia Dale. She had filed complaints, received citations, attended meetings, and financially supported the HOA's expansion program, yet remained unseen with no accompanying photos. "I want to meet this Patricia," my wife said. "Do you think she's behind this?" I asked. "No, I think she's the one sustaining it." The next day we headed to the HOA office, a modest building near the community pool that was supposed to store paperwork. However, through the chipped blinds, we discovered a different scene. server racks, monitors, cameras, radio transceivers, and a monitor streaming live footage from our front porch. "They're watching us," I whispered. "They've been monitoring everyone," she replied. She took a step forward but stopped short. "We won't go inside now, we'll return after dark." I looked at her, confused. Her gaze was firm and clear, a look she bore on missions. "Because if we enter now, we'll face more questions. If we come back tonight, we'll get answers." With that understanding, we walked away, feigning ignorance while strategizing an operation to expose the truth. With the sun barely set, my wife donned her black jacket, tucked a compact torch into her belt, and nodded at me. "Operation Suburbia Sweep," she whispered. I chuckled nervously, realizing she was serious. Her voice was steady and authoritative. "We're going in light and fast, no technology left behind. Cover the entrance, and if I'm not out in 20 minutes, initiate Plan B." I didn't even know a Plan B existed, but having a spouse in Delta Force teaches you not to question in the midst of a mission. As night set in, we slipped out under cover. The HOA office appeared peaceful, merely another shed-like structure beside the community pool, but we were poised to uncover what lay inside. I stayed crouched behind the blooming bushes across the path while she slipped through the side alley, swiftly opened the rear window, and entered with silent precision. The lights remained off and everything stayed still. Through my earpiece, her whisper resonated, clear, starting sweep. Back home, she'd programmed a tiny drone to tail her, its live feed buzzing to life on my phone. What I saw chilled me: walls covered with grainy monitors displaying driveways, side yards, and garages' interiors, cables weaving through power strips marked HOA patrol zone and raid prep room. In the corner stood gear resembling tactical vests, faux radios, clipboards with handwritten patrol logs, and laminated ID cards labeled HOA Civil Defense Unit, a bare-bones SWAT staging area presentation without proper funding, training, or legality. My wife rifled through drawers, uncovered a locked file cabinet, and opened it effortlessly with a pen. Inside were incident reports, pages upon pages, most unsigned, detailing missions like removing unauthorized signage or confiscating tools from unapproved structures. One in particular left me cold. "Verbal engagement unsuccessful. Prepare for elevated response," next to the name Tyler B. She zoomed in and murmured, "They've been orchestrating these hits, outlining routes, assigning targets. This isn't just an HOA playing dress-up, it's organized." Suddenly she halted. A photo captured her attention. She retrieved it and held it up to the drone's camera. It was our house, dated 2 weeks prior to the gun incident, and below it was scrawled, "Primary threat, handle with urgency." A surge of anger nearly propelled me from my spot, but headlights swept across the parking area. A white SUV akin to those used by the enforcers pulled in, parking askew at the side. A man emerged, clad in the same imitation tactical gear we'd seen on Tyler, carrying a clipboard and a bag. Then another appeared. The door creaked open just a crack. "Two coming in," I murmured. "Blend in," she instructed. Maintaining a surgeon's poise as she silently slid under the desk, the two men entered mid-chat. "Patricia wants those reports by dawn," said the new family on plot 17 is still being difficult. "Who's that? The Delta Force woman?" "Yes, she's unnerving. Did you see how quick she was with Tyler? He was crying like a frightened child. Shouldn't have been so rough." "You reckon Patricia will really evict them? She's got the board under her thumb." One word from her and the whole estate dances. Patricia, and her name wasn't just mentioned here like any ordinary resident. It was clear she was the one calling the shots. The men dropped a clipboard on the desk inches from my wife. One muttered, "Why don't we just report it and leave it there? Because Patricia insists we handle this our way. Police achieve nothing here." They finally left, locking the door. 10 minutes later my wife emerged whispering, "I've got everything, let's move." We rushed home. Once there she emptied her bag onto the table, copies of files, server screenshots, surveillance footage, and crucially a memo bearing a watermark that read Patricia D. Dale, Director of Community Enforcement. "She's absent from the website." I said, "She's meant to be." My wife answered, "That's how covert operations function." For the next 2 days we assembled our team. My wife contacted 3 former squad mates. 2 were within driving range. 1 Mac was already embroiled in matters with his own homeowners association living just a neighborhood away. He arrived armed with surveillance gadgets and a toolkit full of legal documents. "I hear there's a dictator in your cul-de-sac," he quipped. We got to work. Discrete cameras were installed around the HOA office linked to a secure laptop. We traced the unauthorized cameras aimed at residents' homes. Mac rerouted their feed to a closed loop so the HOA watched footage from the previous day on repeat. During our investigation, one of my wife's Acquaintances Jess posed as a gardener to snoop around the patrol vehicle, capturing photos of its interior. Jackpot handcuffs, rubber bullets, tactical response checklist. Meanwhile, I spoke to more neighbors. Each conversation helped complete the puzzle. Threats about party permissions, false fire safety charges, fines for incorrect bins. Everyone had a tale but feared speaking up until they viewed the video showing a gun. A short clip was edited, revealing just enough: the gun, the takedown, and the badge. Displayed this we shared in a private neighborhood group, watching views skyrocket. A retired judge reached out to me. I've remained silent too long. If you're confronting them, I'll support you in court. My wife relaxed with a small smile. We have the community, the proof, and the law. Just as we seized control, the doorbell rang again. This time it wasn't paper pushing, it was a threat, a dead crow in a box with a typed note: "Stay out of our affairs, you are observed." Clearly we faced something more sinister than a mere board. Patricia Dale had initiated a battle. The box rested ominously on our kitchen table, the crow's feathers rigid, its beak open like interrupted mid-cry, the note precise and deliberate: "Stay out of our affairs, you are observed." My wife gazed at it for a while, then met my eyes with a chilling calmness. "This crosses the line," she stated, taking the box with gloved hands, sealing it in a trash bag and storing it in the garage freezer. "We'll preserve it, DNA, fingerprints, anything. Treat this as a threat from an external adversary, because that's our reality now." I followed her into the living room where our makeshift command center buzzed with activity cameras, files, and timestamps peppered the screen. The HOA's surveillance loop still played thanks to Mac's clever intervention, but our mission had shifted from defense to offense. "It's time for legal, tactical, and psychological," my wife declared. "They want to intimidate us, we'll teach them the true meaning of fear." That night we initiated Phase 2 of her newly dubbed Operation Wipeout Mac. We embarked on an unconventional operation right from our rooftop, installing a discreet thermal camera to track the nightly routes of the HOA patrols. Jess ingeniously disguised herself as a dog walker to covertly observe the HOA clubhouse, while my spouse conducted surveillance from an unmarked car around the perimeter during shift changes. The footage captured was astonishing. 2 unlicensed patrol vehicles carried out nightly sweeps, with one driver possessing a holstered firearm and another donning tactical gloves with zip ties at hand. These individuals went beyond simple voyeurism, trespassing into backyards, peering into windows, and taking unsolicited photographs. At one stage, they tried to intimidate a young cyclist post-sunset with a megaphone, declaring, "Curfew violation." Max, reviewing the footage, remarked, "They act as if they're exempt from laws, true suburban overlords." The following day, we lodged a formal grievance with city officials, including the mayor's office, code enforcement, and the police department, accompanied by a video compilation, a dossier on the unlawful patrols, and a list of violated HOA bylaws. Yet, instead of prompt action, a rather dismissive police supervisor called, advising, "Mr. and Mrs. Landon, I recommend you keep a low profile. The HOA has lodged complaints accusing you of harassing their volunteers." With determination, my wife directed, "Check your inbox once more." Page 27 was overlooked. That same afternoon, whispers surfaced that drones hovered above our home, not deployed by us but the HOA's. A white quadcopter, labeled Security Surveyor, was surveilling overhead. Swiftly, my wife utilized her tablet to disrupt its signal, causing it to descend abruptly into our front yard. Unfazed, she retrieved the fallen drone, inspected it, and walked indoors. "Illegal surveillance," she quietly noted. "Let's go public." We uploaded the drone footage and HOA clubhouse recording to a concealed Google Drive, anonymously sharing the link with neighborhood homeowners, city council members, and local media outlets, under the provocative headline, "Neighborhood or Dictatorship? A Glimpse into the Unelected HOA." Within hours, online forums ignited in anger, with one neighbor writing to us, "I've incurred 14 fines within 3 months. For reasons now apparent." That evening, tensions rose further. At precisely 2:14 a.m., our motion sensor lights blazed, capturing a figure clad in black approaching our home, hastily tampering with the mailbox before fleeing. My wife reached for her Glock, activating the security lockdown. Moments later, a device, not lethal but deafening, detonated, obliterating the mailbox with sparks and debris. Jess arrived shortly after with a fire extinguisher and medkit. No injuries reported, but she noted, "They're desperate, hoping to incite a reaction. They'll soon discover what response looks like from someone proficient in defense," my wife retorted. By morning, 2 additional homes we had communicated with found their tires slashed. One, a driveway defaced with paint spelling "rat," another had its security camera forcefully removed. That day, the HOA disseminated an official notice, accusing a criminal gang of targeting the vicinity, urging residents to rely solely on HOA security for updates and report suspected individuals spreading misinformation. They're casting us as the menace, I observed, scrutinizing the letter. They aim to sway opinion against us, Jess added. However, trust was already earned. The anonymous folder downloads surpassed 200, triggering intense discussion on local forums. Unexpectedly, we were approached by a whistleblower, Melissa, a former aide to Patricia Dale, who revealed, "I've witnessed enough, I wish to leave." We met her in a neutral setting, a park in a neighboring town. Visibly distressed, Melissa confided, "Patricia possesses files on everyone, even the judge. She conducts background checks, manipulates documents, and blackmails board members. Her enforcement team is selectively chosen, forbidding external involvement. The person who threatened you with a weapon," Patricia instructed him directly. After a contemplative pause, my wife queried, "Will you testify?" "Yes, but amidst this peril, I need protection. She transcends mere bullying." We agreed. Safeguarding her testimony was paramount that evening. I submitted Melissa's testimony and accompanying evidence to the Office of the State Attorney General. Later, as night fell, my wife stepped out into the garden, her gaze fixed on the stars. From the kitchen, I watched her return, a determined look in her eyes. "They think we're mere homeowners," she remarked. "They've overlooked one crucial detail." I asked what that was, and she met my gaze intently. "This is my battlefield, and I never leave loose ends." By dawn, our once serene neighborhood buzzed with whispers, shuttered windows, and bolted gates, a transformation marked not by fear, but anticipation. The local news had discovered our anonymous folder, and while identities were obscured and direct charges sidestepped, the headline proclaimed loudly, "HOA accused of rogue security operations in suburban area." The real authorities could no longer maintain their distance, leading to our court hearing being fast-tracked. Presiding was a judge, a retired colonel with zero tolerance for corruption. We arrived at court early, dressed modestly, not to hide, but in hopes they'd drop their guard. Patricia Dale entered with the air of a dethroned monarch, donned in a white blazer and pearl earrings, escorted by her favored enforcers, including the man who previously attempted to threaten us at the HOA office. Her lawyer seemed indifferent, as though these proceedings were beneath him. However, his nonchalance evaporated when the judge entered, his demeanor turning severe upon seeing the mound of evidence on display. "This isn't merely a homeowner dispute," he declared. "This reeks of a civil conspiracy. Let's commence." The HOA's lawyer resorted to theater, claiming, "Your Honor, the Landons are determined to discredit an organization founded to uphold peace and order. All enforcement was conducted within the rights granted by our charter and was entirely voluntary. Any regrettable incidents were merely misunderstandings." His remarks practically handed us victory. First to testify was my wife, concise and composed. She detailed the gun episode, the disarmament, and revealed her Delta Force credentials. An evident silence enveloped the courtroom. We presented the video, close-up footage of Tyler B. drawing a weapon and my wife neutralizing him in mere seconds. Patricia remained unfazed, but her lawyer visibly shifted. Mac was next to the stand, articulating the illicit surveillance efforts, server configurations, and walked the court through photos of the HOA office, illustrating raid arrangements and engagement logs with resident names. When we unveiled an image labeled "Primary Threat Handled with Urgency," featuring our home, the judge interjected, "Allow me to clarify, this transcends harassment, it is armed intimidation. You, Ms. Dale, orchestrated a paramilitary operation under the guise of an HOA." Patricia replied, "I built this neighborhood, safeguarded it when police failed to act." "You stepped into a federal crime," my wife murmured. Then Melissa, the whistleblower, emerged as a formidable witness. She testified that Patricia manipulated HOA records, planted false citations against dissenters, and conducted clandestine meetings with select volunteers, brandishing terms like urban cleansing and behavioral control. Even the judge seemed repelled. Patricia's attorney objected, questioning the validity of Melissa's testimony. The judge leaned in, "Verified or not, it's consistent and compelling, thanks to the state attorney's office." He paused, signaling the bailiff as the doorway swung open to reveal state investigation agents carrying files. "These documents correspond with reports from 3 other communities," one announced. "Identical structure, tactics, and woman." Gasps resonated throughout the courtroom. The judge reclined, absorbing the enormity before pronouncing, "I'll never forget this. It isn't an HOA but a domestic militia. I hereby sanction immediate cease and desist orders on all enforcement undertakings pending a comprehensive criminal investigation." With Patricia remanded into custody, her handcuffs clicked, and the courtroom collectively exhaled. Her enforcers froze, motionless. Her lawyer quietly gathered his belongings. We exchanged victorious glances. Outside, the community gathered in celebration, having trailed the unfolding story, now outside the courthouse gates. As Patricia was escorted out in shackles, the crowd applauded, slowly, deliberately, expressing relief long suppressed. My wife did not wave, merely walked on through the throng. The evening was one of triumph and transformation as a community, long restrained by the HOA's overbearing presence, gathered freely for the first time in years. Residents unanimously decided to dismantle the existing board, agreeing on Melissa as their interim president. Her pledge was clear: transparency, cessation of patrols, and the disbanding of the enforcement division. Everything from false credentials to the intrusive surveillance measures was confiscated and recorded by law enforcement. While the meeting progressed, my wife remained in the backyard, observing the neighborhood lights flicker on, reminiscent of stars emerging in the night sky. As I offered her a cup of tea, she pondered aloud, "Do you know what was toughest about being in Delta Force? It was the return home, believing the battles were behind her." I agreed, realizing the battlefield had merely shifted focus. She smiled quietly, understanding the enemy had changed but not the fight. Together, we stood silently, sensing a new peace settle over the area, a calmness not cloaked in paranoia but genuine tranquility. The community was now embracing its newfound freedom. Children rode bicycles, unshadowed by bogus patrols. Porch lights glimmered in warmth rather than surveillance, laughter resonating across the cul-de-sac for the first time. Patricia Dale, the tyrant behind the oppressive HOA, faced charges that assured her prolonged absence from suburban life. More than just fear was dispelled, a deeper sense of community flourished. Neighbors began to share lemonade and stories on their steps, while the mailman leisurely strolled through his route. Even the family with prominently bright porch lights left them on all night, a silent tribute to reclaimed peace. At home, our security systems remained active out of routine rather than anxiety. My wife still meticulously checked camera feeds and maintained her gear, remarking, "Just because the battle's over doesn't mean you stop training." Gradually she softened, smiling more readily and relinquishing some of her vigilance. One evening Melissa approached our porch, familiar clipboard in hand. An initial pang of old instincts was quickly dispelled with her laughter. There were no citations, she assured. Instead, she extended a document proposing we redefine the HOA, omitting patrols, embracing community support through volunteer gardening teams and festive events. A safety net was still desired, and she presented a nomination for my wife as the new community safety advisor. Amused, my wife contemplated the offer. After all, she had fiercely defended the neighborhood. Melissa confidently stated, "She kept us safer than anyone else did." A mutual agreement was struck. Transparency, legality, volunteering, and no weapons would form our ethos. My wife consented with conditions: workshops on family self-defense, legal rights seminars, and if badges appeared, they'd strictly be for Halloween. Thus, every Saturday morning saw families assembling in the community park, led by my wife through sessions on awareness, conflict de-escalation, and emergency planning. Children learned to recognize threats and respond if someone feigned authority. Through knowledge, not fear, strength was fostered. Meanwhile, efforts to repurpose former instruments of oppression into constructive tools were underway. The X-Patrol SUV was reimagined as a mobile first aid and repair unit, while the clubhouse surveillance hub turned into a summer movie theater. Tactical gear was donated to legitimate law enforcement training agencies. The highlight was a barbecue hosted by Mac and Jess, now local heroes. It brought an impressive turnout, with amenities from a bounce house to a popcorn machine enhancing the festivities. When genuine police officers dropped by, it was in appreciation rather than investigation. Amid the celebration, a teenage boy approached my wife, the same boy who had once been pursued by a faux patrol vehicle. He handed her a patch of one of the confiscated false badges, saying he had intended to discard it but felt she should have it. My wife accepted, acknowledging the embroidered snippet with a smile, keeping it as a reminder that even in deception, there lay a lesson to embrace. Possessing power doesn't necessarily make one powerful. True strength lies in safeguarding others. That evening we gathered around a fire pit, marshmallows roasting while a few neighbors played guitars. I glanced at my wife, her silhouette softly illuminated by the glow, her eyes serene, free from worry, just enveloped in peace. She leaned in and whispered, "I received a call yesterday." Intrigued, I asked, "From whom?" "The Ministry of Defense," she replied. They've heard about our recent endeavors and mentioned I could still be of use, possibly in a consultancy role. I was taken aback. Are you considering returning? Her gaze shifted to the sky. Not just yet. For the first time, I believe I've discovered an unexpected mission here. I acknowledged, battling suburban issues seems to suit you. She laughed earnestly. It's more chaotic than actual combat. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, an important revelation struck me. We hadn't merely opposed a corrupt homeowners association. We had shifted how our community perceived its own strength. We reminded them that they aren't helpless, and even against a system steeped in intimidation, it only takes one individual who refuses to yield and the courage to stand alongside them. The crow in the freezer remains, a stark reminder of how dire things almost became. Yet seeing it now brings not fear but pride. They attempted to intimidate the wrong couple. Next time anyone contemplates wielding power unjustly, they'll recall what transpired here. They'll remember the woman, poised with a watering can in one hand and military expertise in the other, and they'll wisely choose a different path. N.